Hello again. It's been a while since my last video. I am sorry, but the past months were so busy for me. Anyway, here we are again for another episode of Learning the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish. In today's video, we are going to focus on the second task of the TOEFL writing section, called Writing for an Academic Discussion. Before we jump into the lesson, here are the things you need to know about writing for an academic discussion. First, let us talk about the task requirements. There are two main tasks that a test taker must fulfill in order to have a good chance of earning a good score. You must provide an opinion about the topic or prompt. Then you must contribute to the discussion. Another thing to note, whenever engaged with the task, is the word count requirement, which is at least 100 words. Although you are only required to produce a response that is short, normally a paragraph long, the time given to perform the task is another thing to remember. For the task you are only given 10 minutes. This includes the time you spend in reading the parts of the professor, which includes the prompt or question, then the responses of two students. After reading the parts of the professor and the students, it is now time to write your own response. Also, budget your time limit wisely. Remember that your time spent in reading will affect the time you spend in writing your response, so spend it efficiently. We will have a different video for this, so better watch out for it. So now let us learn how you write a response for this task. As mentioned earlier, one of the requirements that you have to meet is to provide an opinion or choose which side of the prompt you think is better. Your approach depends on what type of question you are asked, so you have to be very careful in understanding what the professor asks you. The first type of question is what I call two-option question. Here you are asked to choose which side of the prompt you think is a better option. For instance, the professor might ask a question like, should the government increase funding for programs for economic growth or for programs that help preserve the environment? By the way, it is okay whichever side of the prompt you choose, for as long as you are able to support your opinion or chosen side with enough details. So, with this type of question, my approach is to share the opinion of one of the students or respondents, and mention that it is the same as my opinion or chosen option. It can be said like, I think that, then mention the name of the student that you have the same opinion with, raised a valid point that the government should focus on programs that center on a country's economic well-being, because it would mean more job opportunities for its citizens. This approach provides a test taker with several benefits. One is that it outright hints a connection between the ongoing discussion and the response that you are trying to develop. Another is that, in case that you are not so familiar with the topic, the borrowed lines from the response of the student, whom you share the same opinion with, helps increase your word count. Remember that you have to at least come up with 100 words, or you might get an automatic deduction from failing to meet the required word count. The other type of question is what I personally call non-limiting question. The straightforward approach is to merely acknowledge the two other students' opinions, then focus on your idea that is not related, or is different from the other two. This approach especially works well in questions where you are not limited with just two options or choices, hence the term non-limiting question. For example, the professor may ask a question like, in what way can the government resolve the problem of traffic in the metropolis? In this type of question, as test taker, you are no longer asked to make a choice between two presented options. Instead, you have the free will to think of a solution that was not mentioned by either student. So you might want to start your response by saying, while student A and B provided feasible solutions to traffic problem, I think the best solution for the government to alleviate traffic in the metro is by, then provide your idea or solution. Like the manner you address a two-option prompt, this approach has several benefits too. One is that it gives you the freedom to expound on the idea or solution that you provide. Next, it also establishes a connection with the discussion. Finally, it also helps increase your word count. To aid you with your preparation for this task, here are some expressions that might help in addressing question type 1. In my opinion, mention the name of the student with the same opinion as you raised a significant point by saying that. If you ask me, in my perspective, and it seems to me that. Now here are some expressions that you might find useful in addressing question type 2. Mention the names of the two students, followed by the phrase, have valid points, however, in my opinion. I would have to agree with both. Again, mention the names of the students regarding their proposed, state the topic of discussion, but for me, a better solution is to both mention the names of the students. Ideas are good, yet, I personally think that a better solution would be. Now that you have met the first requirement of writing for an academic discussion task, let us proceed to the second and more important requirement, which is to contribute to the discussion. Before we continue, let me first remind you that, whichever type of question you are dealing with, it is important to note that as you are permitted to restate an opinion or even opinions of both students, you are not supposed to copy a point that one of them have already explained. If you do this, then your score will be severely affected. And so, how do you contribute to the discussion? Simple. First raise an idea that you think is relevant to the topic, then develop it. Let's say that you again share the same opinion with student A, which is about economic growth. So after mentioning your shared opinion, come up with another advantage that focusing on economic growth might possibly bring. But again, remember that your idea or the advantage that you come up with should be different from student A's idea. For instance, you may say, in addition, by focusing on programs for economic growth, the government can establish comprehensive policies, which may attract foreign investors to invest or even relocate their companies in the country. The next thing to do is to explain why your idea, in which case, your contribution to the discussion is a good, or even better option to take. In providing an explanation, you may again try to answer the question why, how, or for what. What I mean is, how will comprehensive business policies result in foreign investments? Or why should the government try to attract foreign investments? So you might elaborate on your point by saying, when foreign companies see that a country's economy is stable, and that its policies for doing business are well established, they might get interested in expanding their businesses there, since having firm policies may lead to more efficient and more consistent operational procedures. Once you have accomplished the two main requirements of the task, you may end your response with either a restatement of your main sentence or main point, or you may also write about a positive effect of doing such, which in our example's case, to the government. When I say restate, I mean do not simply copy what you have previously said. Doing so might affect the quality of the response. Instead, restate by either changing keywords in the main sentence, or restructure it while preserving its original meaning. And so, in our case, the main sentence of the response is, by focusing on programs for economic growth, the government can establish sound policies which may attract foreign investors to invest or even relocate their companies in the country. Now to restate it, you may say, in the end, programs geared toward a country's economic well-being may produce regulations that may be favorable to foreign businesses, thus enticing them to do business in the nation. As for a positive effect, again let us have our sample, which is the government focusing on economic growth, specifically establishing firm business policies. You can end the response by saying, as for the government, foreign business investments may result to more income from the taxes that both investors and employees have to pay. Before we end our lesson, let us first look at a full version of our sample response, and check if it met the minimum word requirement set by the TOEFL. Let us also check if we are able to meet the task requirements. So, we have here our opinion, which is the first requirement of the task. Do not worry because, although we didn't directly state our opinion about the topic, or we didn't clearly make a choice, by mentioning that the student has a valid point, already hints that you have the same opinion as him or her. Then here is our contribution to the discussion, followed by our explanation or supporting detail. Lastly, we have our ending sentence, which is a positive effect. As for the word count, the total is 128 words, which means that our response was able to meet both task requirements and the word requirement. So this is the end of our lesson about the second task of the TOEFL writing section called Writing for an Academic Discussion. I hope that you were able to learn a lot from our lesson. If you like the video, do not forget to press like, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell to stay updated. With that, see you again on the next episode of Learning the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish.